Welcome to the webinar on grade point averages and class rank. I'm Beth Elliott, your trainer today, and we'll be going over how to do GPA computation and from those do the class rank computation. So we're going to start by going over the concepts of GPA with weighted and the different areas to do that. And then we're going to go into the different tables that affect your GPA computations. So let's start by going into GPAs. We're going to start with the student editor. So we're going to go into the student grade editor. Now in here, if we go to the GPA Class Rank tab, this is going to show us any GPAs that have already been computed for the student. It'll show you the grade points and the credits attempted. The GPA is the grade points divided by the credits attempted. And then if it has been calculated, you will also see the class rank with the class size. The calculation flag is going to indicate whether it is calculated or manual. So a manual indication is that you either modified one of the numbers that are here, or you manually added by going up to the yellow plus the category that is in the list. Otherwise, when you do your actual computation, it will change or set that calculation flag to calculate. And those will show as either an M or a C when you print out that report. And the report I'm indicating is if I go under grades and print a grade student record listing, I can opt to print just the GPA and class rank records. Now, if I don't do a student range when I print, it's just going to show me for every student out there what their GPA is in each of the records. So it gives me that information so we can see here where we have the manual versus the computed. Now you can have as many different GPAs as you'd like. The sample that we're showing here for Amy is showing a career GPA, individual quarter GPAs, an unweighted versus a weighted, a 4.0 GPA versus a 100 base GPA, and also a current school year. Now, grade point average or quality point average, different terminology, sort of the same thing. The computation of how it gets done is pretty much the same. So we're going to close out of here and see where we get these codes that we've stored data into. So I'm going to close out of there and close. So if we go under grades, more grade editing jobs, we can edit the GPA categories. This is where we set up the code for the individual GPA and the description. There is an option to lock that GPA, and what that means is that you can only do a manual entry on it, and you would do that for, say, if you were just bringing in a GPA for a transfer student, but not putting the actual transfer courses in. And so it was just a number that was there. Or some schools might give extra points depending on what sort of courses and how many that the student is taking. So if you have someone that's in a sort of an accelerated program, then you might want to reward them by giving them some extra points. And that's a way to work with there. So we're going to go ahead and close out of here. And then when we're in here, it's just the standard yellow plus to add a record, a red X to delete. Now, if you go to delete a record, and there are records that are already in there, if you say you want to delete the entry, you can say yes, but then it's going to come back and say, wait a minute, we have records there. Are you sure you want to delete those from the students also? And you can say yes, in which case it's all gone, or you can say no, in which case it won't delete anything. So it didn't delete the code for that association. When you're working with transcripts or report cards, it's only going to look at the GPA records that are in the current school year. So some schools that like to show individual year GPAs, they might want to see what their senior GPA was versus their junior, sophomore, or freshman year. Then they would need codes to reflect that. The code is up to 3 characters. The description is 24 characters. I'm going to go ahead and save and exit out of here and look at the other tables of what's actually, we're going to look at the computation first and then go look at where it's pulling all the information. So to actually do the computation for GPA, we go under grades, operations, and we go to compute grade point average. In here, it's going to show different areas that you can work with. Now you can do save and recall settings, so you can bring in as many as you want. So if I'm going to pull in, say, the unweighted career GPA, when I recall that, it's going to shift so that my code is my unweighted career GPA, and then it's going to give me the formula and what I want to do with it. The area that you have here is there is two types of weighting. One weight is when you weight based on the course credit. So if you have a 2-credit course versus a quarter-credit course, do you want that 2-credit course to impact the GPA more than the quarter-credit course? That's one way of weighting a course. You can also do it based on the level of the course. So you could have an advanced placement course versus an honors course versus a general course. And each of those different levels could have a different point value for the same grade. So an A in a honors course might be a 4.5, where in a general course it's 4.0, and in an AP course it's worth 5 points. So the different point values is based on the level of the course, you can have different areas. So you can come in and say you can use the same level for all courses, in which case you're going to, or the opposite of that is to use the level that's in the catalog, and I'll be showing where we get that. So it gives a different area of what's going on. Another GPA that you can have is just the total points, and as we change things, if I say no to weight by course credit, I have a little formula here that says the little sigma here, the sort of funky looking E, is sum of. So when it takes the grade points times the adjusted credit value, it divides that by the sum of just the adjusted credit value. If I turn off weight by course credit, it's just going to take the sum of the grade points divided by the number of grades or courses. Now, if I'm doing total grade points, what that does is it just takes the point value, whether it is weighted or not, but it doesn't divide it by anything. And the reason you might do that is you might have two students with, say, a 4.0 GPA. One student did that with 5 courses. Another student did that with 4 courses. So the total points is different. The GPA is the same, but the total points is. So you might want to be able to say, oh, I want to rank the student who got that higher GPA, who did more courses, to do that. So it gives you a way to do that. And sometimes you'll do that only to, say, narrow down your valedictorian or salutatorian. So which way do you want to work with it? You can opt whether you want to include your transfer courses when you do your GPA or not, and we can work with these other areas. So I'm going to close out of here for a moment, and we're going to go look at the various areas that come in when we do a GPA computation. We're going to start in the course catalog. So under school, we're going to go to Edit Course Catalog. First off, we're going to look at what makes up the GPA by going into the staff portal and looking at the course catalog. We go under Manage, Edit Course Catalog. This is going to bring up a list of all of our courses and how we want to work with them. So as we come in, we can see the course code and description, how many credits the course is worth, the level of GPA, and whether or not to include the course in GPA. To edit a course, to modify the GPA level or to include in GPA or not, you're going to go over to the pencil and click on it. And what that pencil does is it brings up the editor for that particular course. So you can set how many credits the course is worth, the GPA level, and what grade point value group is used when you do your computation. That grade point value group has to do when the teachers are entering their assignments, what grades that they get, whether it's a numeric or letter grade and that sort of thing. You also, on the middle section, have whether or not to include in GPA or not, and that's just a yes or no. And you can modify those as you need. Now, a course that might not be included in GPA is going to be something like a duty for a teacher, or of course, some schools, the phys ed is not included in GPA, or maybe driver ed is not included in GPA. So once you set the information that you want, you can come down and save it. Now, the GPA level that we had here gives us the ability to have up to 10 different levels from 0 to 9. And you can set as many as you want. In this system, a level 1 is your AP courses. So it's going to have more points based on anything else. The next area we're going to look at while we're here in the staff portal is we're going to go in under Manage and Edit Course Sections. The sections are the specific meeting times of the courses, and the reason we're coming in here is because it includes a grade plan. Now, the grade plan is letting us know which grades are used with this course, and it's also going to include some other information of information for the weight of the credits if I'm doing a partial year GPA. So it gives us that capability to edit a section in here. You highlight the section that you want, so I could come down, say, to this English 9 section, and I can click Edit Selected Section. At this point, I can come in and set the appropriate grade plan of whether it is year, quarter, semester, trimester, whatever the case may be. But it gives me that capability to come in and then save it. So those are the two areas that we're going to be looking at when we come in here. Now, if I have a linked course, so if I scroll down on something like my AP Lit and Com, I have a course that has 2 different meeting times, different periods, different days, or it could be different semesters. Even if I had different semesters, I would have the same grade plan in both. So it does give me that capability. So those are the 2 areas that I'm going to be in the staff portal, which is for the catalog and the sections. Now we're going to go back into MMS Generations. You can also get at the catalog or the sections by going under School, Edit Course Catalog, or Edit Course Sections when you're in MMS Generations, besides being able to get to them when you're in the staff portal. But other areas that we're looking at are things like the grade plans. And to do that, we're going to go in under Grades, More Grade Editing Jobs, and we're going to start by editing the grade schemes. The grade scheme is going to be which area to start with. What are my storage bins or my marking periods? Which ones have grades associated with them? The second half of this is coming over to the grade assignment weighting plans. The grade assignment weighting plans are based on the length of the course. What grade fields do I want to work with? So when I look here at my quarter courses, I'm going to see that I have the individual quarter class and a final average. When I look at my semester courses, I can see that I have 2 different quarters, an exam, whether it's the mid-year or a final exam, and a final average. Now the credit percentage changes depending on the length of the course. When I look at my final average, this is included in my GPA. So when I do a GPA computation, it's going to use that grade or whichever grades are checked by default to include in GPA when I do a computation. For some schools, that computation it uses final average. At the end of the year, we're going to look at all our final averages, and that's what we compute on. And that final average is going to be worth 100% of the credit. Other schools might use the marking period grades when they compute their GPA rather than the final average, because that gives a more definitive area of how the student is doing throughout the year. And if I was doing that instead of the final average being checked, I would see that the individual grade fields are checked. So it lets me see what's going on. Now, if I'm doing that, I will need to come in and modify this table for each marking period, because if I was doing a GPA computation on, say, January 31st, it might be that I want to include my quarter 1 and quarter 2 grades, but not my quarter 3, because quarter 3 is in session and hasn't been finished yet. So I need to be aware of that when I'm doing my computations. Now these are set up as we go from left to right, and it lets us see what's going on. Another way to look at this is to go up to the printer button, and sometimes that's an easier way to look at it. I'm only going to print the grade plans, and when I print, it gives me a nice list so it's a little easier to read. So I can see here for my individual quarter courses that I have which grade fields are used, whether it's included in the GPA or not, and what the credit percentage is. As I scroll down, I can see differences, say, between my quarter courses and my semester courses, that on an individual quarter grade, my credit percentage went to 50% when I'm in a semester course versus it was 100% in a year-long course. And that's because an individual quarter grade is worth half the credits because it's half the length of the course. When I get into a year course, whether it includes my AP grade or not, my quarter grades are now worth 25% of the credit because they make up 1/4 of the length of the course. So you can come in and change how that credit percentage works. If you have a situation where you want, when you're doing your quarter grades, that you want it to be worth the full credit value, you change that credit percentage to 100. And you can just continue to do that depending on what you're working with. So your grade plans can influence how your GPA is computed. The next area we're going to look at is the actual valid grade list. Now, first off, I'm going to go into Admin, Database Configuration. In here, when I go to Grading, it gives me the ability under the grading to set the labels for my grade point value groups. And I can have up to 5 different grade point value groups. So I might have one grade point value group that's for my honor roll, and I can have different ones depending on what I'm doing for the regular GPA. And it might be that I have one that I'm doing for 100 base and a different one on a 4.0 base. And I can do that just by coming in and changing the label. So I can come in and say it's a GPA 100 base. So that just makes it easier for me to see what I'm doing when I'm working in other areas. I might have a different one that's in here that's on a pass-fail. So it just gives a way for me to work. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now when I go in under Grades, More Grade Editing Job, I edit the valid grade list. It's going to start at the top with what are my point values. So which grade point value group do I want to work with? This makes it easier to remember which one I'm working with. You might also have a different grade point value group if your point value changed from one year to another, and you are finishing up with the older point system, say for your seniors or juniors, and you're adjusting your sophomores and freshmen into the newer point value. That's another reason where you might have a different point value. So in here, you're going to have your grades. The alternate grade is just there so you can see what it looks like. The PFN is your pass, fail, no credit. You have whether it's a withdrawn grade or not, and one of the big ones here is whether to include this grade in GPA. As I scroll down, I'm going to see things like my medical is not included in GPA and incomplete. In this system is not included in GPA because they haven't finished. They're missing some information. Your withdrawn might not be included in GPA, and that's up to you. And then you can set how many points you want to be worth. If I scroll toward the bottom, I'm going to see my higher grades, and I see here on level 0 that the point values for a level 0 course matches the actual grade, but a level 1 course is 2% higher. So it gives me that ability to go up a little higher because that's my AP course. Now, whether it's a percentage higher or a flat how many points higher is entirely up to the school. As I continue right, this is going to scroll. I'm going to continue seeing which grade it is. But now I'm seeing, say, level 4, and I can come in here and see, oh, anything 90 and above is a 4.0. Anything in the 80s is a 3.0. Anything in the 70s is a 2.0. So I can do a non-weighted GPA on a 4.0 basis by just saying, instead of using the level that's in the catalog, I want to use level 4. Now, when I do it this way, without having the 2 different point values in level 0 and 1, I'm doing a non-weighted 4.0 GPA. If I want it to be a weighted 4.0, where level 1 has more points than level 0, then I need to do it in a different grade point value group in order to have my AP courses worth more than my regular and honors courses. But that's where those different levels come in. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of here. So it gives me that ability to go in and see what's going on. So next up is we'll go back and actually do our computations. One thing I forgot to mention, and that is if I go back to my course catalog, actually I'll start in the sections. You have an include transfer courses, and you can check that so that when you look at these, it's going to include any transfer courses that you might need to come in and look at to see whether you need them or not. And you can do the same thing under the course catalog. So in the catalog at the top is where I include my transfer courses, And you might need to look at this in prior years to be able to go back and see what is the GPA level of a transfer course, am I including it in GPA, and how many credits is it worth. So when I do a GPA computation, because a lot of times it is multiple year, I need to change the data or verify the data in the year that I'm in. Now, being back in MMS Generations, we're going to go back and look at our computations again. So under Grades, Operations, we're going to compute the grade point average. I'm going to go ahead and recall a setting. Just look at the career GPA, a straight career. Just double click it and it'll recall it. So it gives me the ability to pick which category I want to store into. And this is how it knows what to store or where to store it. This GPA, I do want it to weight by course credit. And at the bottom, I can say what I want to compute. And in this case, I'm going to leave it as a career GPA. And because of that, I can set up the school years and the summary records for the career GPA. Now, when I go in there, it's going to give me all of the years that I have records with in the grading area. And if I wanted to do a 4-year GPA, I could click on the first one, hold my Shift key down, and select the last one, and that'll select all 4 years. Or I can use my Control key to toggle between. The left side, when I do my computation, says that I'm actually going to look at each individual grade, and I'm going to compute it. So I'm going to go in and do a calculation on each of those areas. The right side says I want to use a summary record to bring it in. I might use that summary record if I have a slower computer and I want to say compute the current year, but I want to bring the year-to-date from the prior year or the individual, either the year-to-date from each of the current years or the career from the prior year. Or I might use a transfer record in there. So the left side is where it's going to do the actual computation. The right side says just suck in the numbers that I'm going to give it to you. And that might be because I don't have some of the backup records in order to do the actual computation. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to use the level that is in the catalog when I do this computation. It's letting me see that I'm using the 100 base GPA, and it says I want to allow substitution when the empty grade fields are found. So what that's saying is if my grade plans say use the final average for GPA, what do I do when I don't find a final average yet? I have a year-long course. At that point, it would be, if this is the end of semester 1, I don't have a final average yet. So I can come in and say, what do I want to do when I don't find that final average? When we click on the Setup Grade Field Substitution sequence, this gives us the ability to see which field are we looking at. If this first field is empty, what else do we want to look at? Now, in this case, we're saying if the final average is empty, I want to look at the mid-year average and the semester 2 average. And then below that, I'm saying, well, if the mid-year average is empty, I want to look at quarter 1 and quarter 2. And if my semester 2 is empty, I'm going to look at quarter 3 and quarter 4. So depending on what I'm working on, it gives me the ability to come through part way. Another way, and these are the defaults when you build the defaults. Another way to do this is instead of looking at the final, from the final go to the semester, from the semester go to the quarter, or whatever system that you're using, I could opt and say, well, let's get rid of them all and just add a new one in. And I can say, well, if I don't have the final average, then I want to start looking at the quarter grades. I'm not even going to look at the semester, I just want to look at the quarter grades. And if I was in, say, the end of quarter 3, but before I'm in quarter 4 is in the process, then I can come in and say, look at quarter 3. But if I'm at the end of quarter 2, quarter 3 has started, so it might have grades, I might want to stop at this point and not look at the quarter 3 grades. Because this is where I can specify how far I want to look when I start doing my computation. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. You can include your transfer courses if they are set up for GPA. And to cut this down, I'm just going to do a couple of students. So I clicked on the student range button. So if I had to recompute for a particular family, maybe for the two Abbiatici sisters, I'm going to go ahead and only select those two students. And I could do that just by deselecting all and select the student I want to work with. You can always sort by any column, such as the year of grad, which say I could have the ability to select just my seniors or just my juniors to give that capability to set it up. And how I work with that is right down to here on how to search, how to sort, and how to select students. You always have above the check mark area how many students you have selected. And I'm going to go ahead and process. So it verifies that's what I'm going to be working with. And it's going to run through and do the computation for me. It processed the two students, and what's a really nice feature is the ability to view print the log. When I go into view print, I can max this out. It's going to show me for the student and their ID a list of their courses and sections, the grade field it used in the calculation and its grade, the credit, which is actually an adjusted credit value. So some of these, it's for this course 723 or T78. It's not a full credit, and that can not a problem with that. And then how many points it's worth. So my 90 here in my 0.4 credit course is a 36 for the points, not a 90. Just as the 89, because it's a half credit course, is 44.5. We're here on a full credit course, it's 89. The points might also be different if I'm working with a AP or honors course, because that has more, might be worth more than a regular course. And what's nice is you can come in here and look and decide, wait a minute, that's not the right point value, or that's not the right credit value. And because it's showing me the school year and the course section, I know where to go look to fix it. But as I scroll down, I'm going to go for Amy here, who's a junior, from her 13-14 school year to 14-15, and then into 15-16. So I've gone from using the final average in 14-15 to using the quarter grades when I'm in 15-16, because those courses aren't complete yet. So there was no final average, so I'm using the quarter grade instead. So I have 3 lines here for course 111, section 1. The first 2 are the individual grades that I worked with, and then I'm going to have a total line where it's showing the course complete. And I actually did that for each of my other ones. It's just more noticeable when I'm in a longer than that course. If I go to the next page, I also see it continuing here, and then you also have a situation where it says, oh, course not included in GPA. So it's letting me know, wait a minute, this isn't here. I don't need to work with this course. And I can look at the course code of CCC and happen to know that's my lunch code. Below that, I have a different course, and it's letting me know that, oh, the quarter grade, there is no grade, and it's letting me it's empty and says, oh, I had no substitution. So sometimes I might find that empty grade and say, oops, I didn't do anything to do the substitution. When it gets done, it's going to give me how many points the student has and how many credits attempted. So it lets me work with that, and then it's going to show me what it did with her sister Christine, only here I'm going back to 12-13. But it's going to do the same sort of thing as I go through and show me how many total points and how many credits. If I was computing by without weighting by course credit, my credits then would always be a whole number, because it's going to indicate how many grades I'm working with instead of the adjusted credits. And that's just a matter of coming here and saying, no, don't do it by that, in which case I wouldn't see the 0.4 credits or the 0.5 credits. I would see everything was worth 1 credit because it's actually 1 course. Just gives me a different way to look at it. If I was doing a 4.0 calculation, I'm going to recall that setting, and now I'm using level 4 instead of the level that's in the catalog. Everything else can be the same. Now in this case, it's a current year GPA rather than a career. So my button down here to do my substitution isn't active, because for current year and term, I don't need to look and say what years I want to work with. I can still do a grade substitution. And in this case, it's looking at the semesters, and we're going to leave it that way this time. And we're going to go ahead and process. It's going to run through the same 2 students. But when I look at the view, my points are different. My credit percentages can be the same. And in this case, I have my semester and then my quarter. But my points are different because I'm on a 4.0 scale rather than on a 100 scale. So it goes through and runs the same sort of thing. And I'm only seeing 15, 16 because that's a current year GPA. So my totals at the end are going to be different. But it'll still take my 15.65 and divide by 4.5. It lets me see what's going on with that. If I was looking at an individual term GPA, say I looked at my quarter 2, I have my quarter 2 GPA up here, and then I have my term, and then I can come down and select what term I want it to compute for. And I can select more than one. So this gives me ability to say, oh, take all of my courses that are set to include in GPA and give me an average of just the quarter 2 grade. I want to use the level that's in the catalog. Go in and compute. And there is no substitution because I'm only doing the terms that I specify. So now when I process, I'm still using my 100 base. So when I view, most of these are all going to be on the quarter, except for this course that was worth a 0.4. But it's seeing just that individual. And here I have an empty grade, so it basically doesn't do anything with it because it's not included. So it gives us that capability to go in and look and see what's going on. Now, if I want to print this report, I can go to my printer here, and it's going to give me the ability to pick where I want to print it. I could also change my output option and say, oh, I'd like to send that to Excel or a PDF and be able to say where I want to put it. I could change the name of the file at this point, and I can say where I want to put it. I'm using a remote desktop where I have said I want to have access to my local drives. So when I scroll toward the bottom here, I can see my C on my local machine. And at this point, I might have a folder where I have my PRW information, the Precision Report Writer, or some other MMS folder that I can say I want to put it in there instead. And now it's going, instead of on my server, I can put it onto my local machine, which means I then have access to it to be able to work with it. And if I say that's what I want to do, now when I view print, instead of bringing it up to the screen, it actually output it and put it on my local machine, which is really nice to be able to come in and work with that. Once your GPAs are created, and if we go back into the student grade editor, we're going to be able to see those. So in here for Amy, I can see the updated GPA for career quarter 2 or my 4.0. And earlier when we looked at Amy's career GPA, it was manually for the calculation flag, and because we modified it, it's now, and we redid the computation, it's now calculated. So it gives that ability to work with it. I did forget to show you one of the options for the GPA computation. So we're going to go back in there. So when we were in here, one of the things when we were doing a career GPA was the difference between the calculation on the left versus the summary records on the right. So I could opt that I want to calculate this year, but I want to bring the career from 14-15. So if I know my career is in good shape at the end of last year, I can add in what I've done so far this year. So we're going to compute. We're going to look at our 2 students again, and I'm going to process. Excuse me, forgot to do the substitution. So now when I go through, the difference when I do the view is it does the calculation for the individual year. But at the bottom of this, When I start the next page for the other student, is it did the individual year, but then it brings in the summary record of the career from 14-15. So instead of showing the individual calculation, I'm getting an actual summary record. So it's going to bring in the grade points and the credits. So it just gives me a different way to come in and look at it. So it makes it kind of nice. So once the GPAs are calculated, and I can come back and take another quick look here, I can come in and see the point values of the grade points and the credits attempted to get my GPA. To get the rank, I'm going to leave this here, and I'm going to go into Grades, Operations, and we're going to compute class rank. When you compute the class rank, you pick which GPA you want to compute it on, and it doesn't matter whether it's weighted, unweighted, total points, it's whatever GPA is there. And below that, I can say what I want to compute it for. Do I want to do it for a specific year of grad, in which case I've indicated what it is here, and I can just go ahead and process. So it did the 135 students that are the class of 2016. But when I do the selected year of grad, to do the next one, I'd have to come over, select that, and process again. And there it did the 102 students. The next option gives us the ability to say, oh, I want to do them all within the career, but I don't want to say which one I want to do. So when I process, I only have to click once, but it's going to run through and do it for each different year of grad. So now it processed all 503 students, but I didn't have to sit there and process each one and keep clicking it. The third option is to do a school-wide ranking, in which case it ignores the year of grad and processes everyone together. So it's not going to look at who's doing what. And I might do that on a current year GPA, where I want to say, well, I'm looking at this year only. Let's run through and see who's got the highest GPA of the school, because I'm only looking at the current year. So it lets me do that. Once that's computed, I can come in under Grades, More Grade Reports, and I can print the class rank report. The rank can be done by two orders. I pick which GPA I want to do it for, and then I can either print in the rank order or the filter order. And a lot of times your filter order is straight student order. As we did with the computations, we can say, who do we want to print it for? So if I want to do it by the year of grad, just the seniors, I can go ahead and print, and it's going to show me up at the top which GPA I'm ranking, or showing the rank for, and then it gives me the students in GPA order. If I have two students that have the exact same GPA, they're going to have the same rank. I have one here for that. And I would see a jump in the number. Let's see if we have that in our 4.0 system. So if I look at the 4.0, I might see two students. Now this I can see without any numbers here, that it was never ranked. So let's go rank those students. Got down, and I'm just going to do the seniors. So if I reprint that report for just the seniors, I can come down and see these two students both had a 3.8333. So they both have a rank of 4, and there's nobody with a rank of 5. So it lets me see that they have an equal number of points for me to work with. Now looking at this, this is where the total points can make a difference. So if I look at Julie Hartman and Kenneth Marchetti, if I go ahead and print their record listing to look at their GPAs, So I have my two students. Now when I print, when I look at the 4.0, they both have a 3.888, and in this case they both have the same point value, but they might have had a different point value having the same GPA. And that's where sometimes this can make a difference when I come in and take a look. Now you will sometimes have the situation where you do not want a student to be ranked. And that might be that it might be something in their IEP, or it might be that they're a transfer student. To go in and modify that, I can go in under more biographical editing jobs and set the student active inactive status. When I come in here under grade reporting, I have the ability to exclude a student from class rank. Their GPA will still be computed, it's just that they won't be included in the rank or in the number of students that are in that rank. So it does give me the ability to go in and modify. So it just gives me another area that I can work with. So just as a quick recap, we go back under biographic, more editing jobs, set student active inactive status. And by the way, that status is rolled year to year. So when you transfer the students from one school year to another, for such as they're going to be doing in February or so to start scheduling for the new year, if the student was already excluded from class rank in the current year, when you roll that record to the new year, they will still be excluded. So you might have to go in and modify that. Beyond that, we're in the student grade editor or under grades, edit student grades to see their GPA and such. We went in the generations, it would be under school, edit course catalog or edit course sections to set the credits and GPA level, or we do it under manage in the staff portal. We also came in under grades, more grade editing jobs. We edit the GPA categories to get which categories we're going to save into. We edited the grade schemes for the credit percentage, for the grade plans that are associated with the sections. And we came in here to do the edit valid grade list to say how many points each of those grades were worth. And all of that can be influenced, and I might need to change school year to modify and fix that. And all it takes is one point value to be off for one specific grade that can influence what you're doing. But it gives the ability to go in and see what's going on. We thank you for participating on doing class rank and GPA, and I hope you found this helpful.